So every empire reaches its most violent point right before its collapse, and the US right now is a prime example of exactly that. The US government now deals with every single one of its crises exclusively with violence. There's a homelessness crisis that is answered only by violent policing. Protesters turning to the streets are attacked by militarized police. The US economy has stalled and consumer spending has collapsed, so they bomb and overthrow governments to loot more resources, like in Venezuela. Political stability and legitimacy is collapsing, so what do? Start new wars with Iran and Iceland, of course. And this is not unique to the United States. Every empire reaches its most violent phase just before its collapse. The British Empire saw its most violent years between 1947 and 1955 as it used genocidal violence in places like India, Palestine, Kenya and Malaysia in a desperate attempt to hold on to the colonies that were now in open revolt. The Dutch Empire, and we are being very generous of that title, saw its most intense period of violence from 1945 to 1949 as its empire collapsed in the face of Indonesian independence. France committed some of the most infamous crimes against humanity in Algeria and Vietnam as they fought desperately to try and stop them breaking away from the French Empire. Japan killed more people between 1937 and 1945 than in all the rest of Japanese history combined, and it happened after Japan already knew its empire was collapsing. By the time Nazi Germany began invading all its neighbours in 1939, the Nazi government was already straining from the consequences of uncontrolled corruption, nepotism and rampant cronyism. All things that would only get worse as the wars dragged on. The nationalist Chinese government, the one that still holds Taiwan today, spent years massacring any suspected communists or dissidents in the country in an ultimately futile attempt to hold on to power in China. So what we are seeing happening in the US right now is not new or unique. This is how every empire ends, consumed by violence and extreme corruption, as every person in a position of power seeks to make as much money as they can in the death throes of the capitalist empire. And all the violence and war, including the ICE agents in the streets and the imminent war with Iran, all of it is just a cover for this heist. Trump and the billionaires, the Democrats and the Republicans, none of them care about what happens to America now, only how much wealth they can extract from it during its collapse. This was always America's fate. You can't have an empire run on nothing but violence and extraction forever. And although the next few years will likely be the hardest any of us have ever experienced, just know that the single biggest obstacle to world peace, the single biggest obstacle to sustainable economy and community-focused socialist governments has always been the US empire. And its collapse will mean the entire planet can actually have a chance to turn it all around and build a better world for all of our children. So no matter how bad it gets, do not despair. Stay strong, organize your community, and know that our darkest hour may also be our finest. Anyway, something to think about.